Hi, I'm Paul Manganaro. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm introducing equipment that I've been working on for several years. This is my MIDI studio. Starting with a paper player piano music roll, I create a music file in MIDI format. Then I add a high level of expression to the music. Finally, I assign a piano sound and end up with a recording that sounds like a live performance. I use this half of the equipment to make MIDI files and to add expression into the music. It works like an old player piano. It's a combination of player piano components and computer technology. Although this works like a mechanical player piano, it does not contain an acoustic piano. The music is produced digitally. I graduated high school in 1973 and immediately started restoring my first player piano. In the fall of that year, I went into business as a full-time restorer. That remained my occupation for more than 45 years. The components you see here are either restored old player piano parts or they've been custom built from scratch. I've been collecting rolls and pumping player pianos for all these years, and I've come to realize that there's more music on a piano roll than you can hear on a player piano. This is a typical piece of sheet music that was made in the early 1900s. For decades, they made sheet music with these colorful covers. If you were a piano player back then, this is what you would buy to learn to play a song. But if you played the music note for note, it wouldn't sound really musical. If you only played the music shown here exactly as it's written, it would sound very stiff and robotic, especially if you didn't put any feeling or extra notes to fill in the tune. That's exactly how player piano rolls sounded in the year 1900. In a piano roll factory, a technician with basic musical knowledge would follow a piece of sheet music. Every note would be transposed to become a hole in a master roll. Master rolls were cut onto heavy paper or cardboard. The sprocket holes on each side of the master pull it through the perforator. Master rolls look much different than piano rolls because the music is expanded. For every foot of master roll that's run through a perforator, only a few inches of the finished piano roll are produced. This old piano roll is 120 years old. It's the same width as an 88-note roll, but if you notice, it has pin ends. This was a standard style of music roll for all player pianos up until 1909. Player pianos built in 1909 and some built in 1910 were equipped to play early 65-note rolls as well as the standard 88-note rolls that are still made today. To change from one to the other, you'd move a lever from 65 to 88 and you change the drive chuck on the upper spool. In 1900, most well-to-do families owned a fine piano. They considered these to be family heirlooms that they expected to pass down to future generations. It was asking too much from these families to trade in their family's piano for a player piano. So instead, units were produced to push up to existing pianos. 65 wooden fingers would press down on the piano keys. Compressed felt, similar to hammer felt, was used on the bottom of each finger to contact the keys. Many brands of push-ups were produced to compete on the market. The Aeolian Corporation outpaced all competitors. Their brand name, Pianola, became synonymous with player piano. For several decades since its introduction, if someone wanted to say they had a player piano, they'd say they owned a pianola. Today, in England and other countries, the term pianola is still used in place of player piano. Aeolian was a large, powerful corporation, and it was due to their advertising campaigns that player pianos became widespread. At first, 65 notes were not thought of as a limitation because the vast library of classical music had been composed on early pianofortes. These early instruments preceded modern pianos and had a limited number of keys. Wealthy owners used push-ups to continue playing classical music and subdued popular songs. By 1905, sales had increased, and upright player pianos were affordable to a wider audience. The middle class wanted to hear show music, popular songs, and ragtime. I'm going to play a few seconds worth of this 65-note roll from 1905. This was transcribed from sheet music. As you can see, it has markings on the roll to show you how loud the music should be. So I'll be pumping harder here. A line on the right means the music is loud, and over here the music is medium. The harder I pump, the louder the music will be. If you can imagine what it was like back in that time to hear music of that quality in your own home, this was state of the art. As if you didn't know how to play an instrument, the only options would be to listen to a music box, a little crank organ, or a phonograph record. Now it's time to talk about arrangements. You have your favorite songs, and sometimes you hear that song covered by someone else, and you just don't care for it as much. Maybe it's because you really enjoy your singer's voice or the sound of the band, but chances are it's because of the arrangement. I'm going to jump ahead to 1928. I have 3 different rolls, each one with a different arrangement of the same song. So let's see which one you like best. Crazy Rhythm was a number from a musical show. The show debuted on Broadway on May 1st of 28. This set of numbers means this roll was released by QRS in September, just a few months later. Popular music came and went so quickly, QRS had factories in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco in order to get rolls into stores as quickly as possible. The label lists Max Cortlander as a roll artist, but this roll was cut by J. Lawrence Cook. The use of pseudonyms was common to make a roll company seem as if it had a larger staff of artists than it actually did. This Atlas brand roll was also produced in 28. Atlas was known for its snappy, syncopated arrangements. Finally, this QRS roll shows a copyright date of the song as 1928, but the serial number of the roll indicates this version of the song was produced in 1958. Tiny Little was a piano player featured on the Lawrence Welk Show in the late 1950s. There was a revival of player pianos in ragtime at that time. Tiny Little mailed his arrangement to QRS, where it was made into a piano roll by J. Lawrence Cook. I'm going to play the tail end of each of these rolls so you can hear the difference in arrangements. As you just heard, an arrangement can change the entire sound of a song, and a good arrangement can sway a person to buy one brand of roll over another. By 1905, piano rolls transcribed from sheet music had become less appealing than arranged music. Piano roll companies were forced to hire musicians capable of creating imaginative arrangements. These are 3 early 88-note rolls cut in 1910 on the Virtuoso label. Each one was arranged by Herman Avery Wade. Wade is the most well-respected arranger on early 88-note rolls. Many roll collectors try to get as many of his rolls as they can. Virtuoso produced 65-note rolls with a different series of serial numbers. For their very first 88-note roll, they changed the look of the label and started the 88-note series with the number 80,000. In 1911, the company changed their name to Herbert. Wade worked for Virtuoso from 1908 until 1913. Then he left Virtuoso and worked for Aeolian from 1912 through the end of 1916. This is my favorite roll. It's a medley of songs from a Broadway show. I've only found 2 copies of this roll in all these years. 1909 was the first year that all roll companies started to produce 88-note rolls. So this is spaced properly for an 88-note roll. But if you'll notice, there are no holes on the edges of the paper. That's because this was cut from a 65-note master. This is something you'll find not only on this brand, but on early rolls made from 1909 through the early teens in about 1912 or so. These companies were still producing 65-note rolls, so they used the same master roll to produce 65-note rolls as well as the 88-note versions. There's something interesting I want to show you on the inside of the top of this box. If you look in here, there are some dates stamped. And this is something you'll find on early 88-note rolls. The earliest date I have here is October 1910, so that's when the roll was new. This roll started its life in a roll library. Unlike public libraries, roll libraries were privately owned and run for profit. Aeolian, being such a large corporation, had comprehensive libraries, like this one located in Madrid, Spain. Their libraries exclusively offered only their brand of rolls. Aeolian library rolls were covered with canvas to make the boxes sturdy for shipping. Customers could order rolls through the mail. Here's the back room of one of their libraries with cartons of rolls on the right-hand side ready for shipping. All other roll libraries would offer a wide range of brands, including Aeolian rolls. Many roll libraries were located in department stores, where there would be a section for roll sales as well. Here's the Litt Brothers department store. I've owned several QRS rolls retitled with this Philadelphia department store name. Roll libraries were also located in piano stores, like this Kimball store in Chicago. Piano stores would have roll sales department as well as a roll library. Finally, roll libraries would be part of your local music shop where you could buy or rent rolls. Each roll library would have its own rules. Oftentimes, there would be a paper glued on the top of the box or on the inside of the box. Generally, you would pay so much per year to use the library and then borrow rolls for 5 or 10 cents per roll for a week or two. If you liked the roll, you would pay for it and keep it. A large multi-tune roll like the Jolly Bachelors would have sold for 75 cents or $1 back then. Single-tune rolls would sell for about 40 cents. In 1910, unskilled workers earned about $5 for a 60-hour work week. A middle-class family's yearly wage would be around $2,000 to $4,000 a year. In the 1970s, when I was buying player pianos with rolls and roll collections from the original owners, typically a collection would only be about 50 rolls. People made similar decisions using roll libraries as we do today when we consider renting a film or buying it. One of the questions people often ask is, can a person really play that? The answer is, even if one person could play all the notes on a certain roll, all piano rolls are arranged. Even if the label has the words hand played on it, it was still arranged. There was a market for hand played rolls, so attempts were made to capture live performances. This is a marking machine made in the early teens. While a person was playing the keyboard, triggers under the keys would operate the marking machine. Each note played on the keyboard caused a small bellows or pneumatic to push down on a wire. As the wires pressed on the moving paper, the carbon paper on the rotating drum beneath would leave marks on the underside of the paper. The lines would have to be cut out by hand to make holes, and then the rough draft would be edited. The draft wasn't just edited for incorrect notes, it was edited for timing. This draft required so much editing, it was never made into a piano roll. There were two reasons why rolls were produced with perfect timing. First, it was very common back in the day for people to gather together to sing and dance to player piano music. A strict musical beat was important for doing both. The second reason had to do with the perforators that punched the holes in the paper. When a musician is working with sheet music, whether they're composing or playing, they're thinking about math. Let's listen to a QRS arrangement of this song so that you can hear how each measure is divided into 4 parts. A musician or piano player sees music this way, but a roll arranger sees music this way. So if they were to start playing here, this would be the first note. So on the piano roll, this is the first note. And with 4/4 time, we see 1, 2, 3, 4. These are quarter notes because there are 4 notes in the measure. So these appear on the piano roll like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one measure of music. At first glance, making a piano roll seems simple. If you want a note to play, that's where you put a hole. But the process to create a piano roll becomes very complicated very quickly. On this brand of roll, it takes 6 holes to make each quarter note, and so it takes 24 to make a whole note. The number 24 was chosen because it could be divided into 4 parts of 6 notes for most songs, or in 3 parts of 8 for waltzes. Long notes made of single holes like this are called ladder chain perforations. These are used instead of one long slot because they add more stability to the paper than slots. This spacing was chosen because the rungs of the ladder are narrow enough that these chains sound like long notes, like this. If the holes were spaced any farther apart from one another, individual holes would sound as single notes, like this. Due to the limitations of the perforator this individual company used, arrangers could not place a note here or here. The holes could only be placed dead center of this spacing. You might use a hole punch like this in your home or office. Inside, there are 3 spring-loaded punches. A perforator has 88 punches in a row. This is a home model perforator. It's lightweight and fits on a tabletop. It can only produce 1 roll at a time. On the bottom of the hole punch is a plate with a hole the exact size of the punch. This plate is called the die plate. A perforator works the same way. Paper passes over the punch plate or die, and the punches cut holes in the paper. This illustration shows a thick die made of hardened steel at the bottom. The shoe at the top pushes down on the movable punch to punch holes in the paper. Perforators can cut through more than a dozen thicknesses of paper at once to produce multiple copies of a roll. This is a more accurate representation of the punch head. Commercial perforators weigh hundreds of pounds and are made of cast iron and steel. Here's where the punches are located. Perforators like this can cut tens of thousands of holes every day and, with maintenance, can run for decades. The punch from a perforator is much smaller than that from the hole punch. 88 of these would be spaced closely together at 9 to the inch. The same spacing is on the brass tracker bar. 65 notes are spaced 6 to the inch. Perforators have another part that goes here. Long pieces of steel like this are called interposers. This block of wood will act as the upper shoe. When the upper shoe pulses up and down on top of the punches, the shoe doesn't go down far enough to push the punches down through the paper. Holes in the master roll send commands to the interposers to move here, under the shoe and on top of the punch, to drive the punch through the paper. Every time the shoe moves up, a number of interposers slide on top of the corresponding punches to create a single row of holes across the width of the paper. Rolls of blank paper are fed into the back of the perforator. Newly punched rolls are pulled toward the front. The master roll on top commands which interposers slide forward. A row of 88 interposers are located here. The upper shoe moves up and down several times per second, only a bit higher than the height of the interposers. Newly punched paper moves forward in between the punch area and on top of the die plate. Interposers, represented by two white lines, move forward under the upper shoe on top of the punches. When commanded, the interposers slip forward about 1/4 of an inch. Before each row of holes is punched, the paper comes to a complete stop. If the paper did not stop, the punch would cause the paper to buckle or tear. The number of times the perforator stops for every foot of paper is called the step rate. The step rate used for making this roll is 142. A generous step rate is 320. And so, with every arrangement, holes must be placed on a grid. This gives piano rolls a unique sound. Roll companies soon realized there wasn't any difference between editing a hand-played draft to fit the step rate of a perforator or arranging rolls to a grid from scratch. In the end, companies had their roll artists arrange music that sounded hand-played. Producing piano rolls could be very profitable and was a large part of the music industry. By 1909, the Industrial Revolution had peaked. Large companies like QRS, Aeolian, and American Piano would each produce 10 to 20 million copies of rolls each year from catalogs offering 3,000 to 4,000 titles. Many companies established themselves after 1909 to produce 88-note rolls. Every new company had a decision to make. When the roll is stopped for punching, no product is moving toward the store's shelves. A lower step rate meant faster production, more profit, but it also meant that arrangements had to be kept simple. Just as early 1900 roll companies could not foresee the coming of rolls arranged by musicians or predict the change from 65 to 88-note format, companies founded after 1908 couldn't see what great change was coming their way, the jazz age of the Roaring Twenties. Jazz didn't follow conventional rules because jazz musicians played notes wherever and whenever the music took them. Most perforators were not capable of punching jazz's random spacing of notes. QRS was able to work around this problem. 70 means that 7 feet of paper pass over the tracker bar every minute. Naturally, 75 means 7.5 feet per minute. The QRS perforator had a high step rate, but not quite high enough to arrange jazz. So they raised the tempo. That gave more spacing for every bar of music. If you find a QRS roll with tempo of 90, you know you're going to hear some jazz. So at tempo 70, one bar of music would have this many choices for spacing. But with more paper going by at tempo 90, the same measure of music would have this many choices. Many 88-note roll companies were left out of the jazz market, but continued to produce foxtrots and waltzes. This is how QRS created popular music rolls. Here's J. Lawrence Cook at the keyboard that was used to create master rolls. Mr. Cook created 15 to 20,000 arrangements for QRS for more than 40 years, from the 1920s to the 1960s. Mr. Cook's right foot presses a pedal every time another row of holes is ready to be punched into the master roll. Here's Rudy Martin at the same equipment in the 1970s. In this shot, you can see colors above the keys to mark each octave. Above that, there are black and white levers that can be pulled out to hold extra notes. This is how QRS rolls ended up with more than 10 notes playing at one time. Now that we've covered how popular music was arranged mechanically on piano rolls, let's see how it was arranged musically. I'm going to start with a MIDI file of this 1939 piano roll, Over the Rainbow, and of course this was the same year as The Wizard of Oz was released. The MIDI file I'm going to be working with was created on this half of the equipment. In the next video in this series, I'll show how I create these files. I use Reaper software. I'm not sponsored. It's just that this software works well for me as a DAW, or a digital audio workspace. When MIDI files are usually created, all of the notes play at one volume level. In MIDI, this is called velocity. The velocity scale goes from 1 for very soft to 127 for loud. This is right in the middle. The MIDI file sounds pretty good to start with. Frank Milne worked as a roll arranger for about 40 years, starting in the days of 65-note rolls, although his early work goes uncredited on roll labels. Roll company arrangers were already experienced at creating arrangements for orchestras. Today we associate the term orchestra with classical music, and the term big bands is associated with the 1940s. In the early 1900s, big bands were called orchestras or jazz orchestras. This is orchestrated sheet music. These same 6 measures are written out for each musician's instrument. There would be as many parts written out as there were musicians. When arrangers were hired to work in this new field of piano roll music, they transferred their familiar way of arranging for orchestras to what was then a new format. It's doubtful that arrangers owned player pianos. After a MIDI file has been created from the piano roll, I use this half of the equipment to divide the music into sections. The original MIDI file is shown in the top track in gray. I reverse engineer the arrangement and break it down into individual parts, just as it would have been if this song had been arranged for an orchestra. For example, this is a single note melody. And here's the accompaniment. In the Reaper software program, I'm showing the original single MIDI file after it's been divided up into 6 tracks: high note, single melody, main melody, etc. For demonstration purposes, I've assigned a different instrument to each track. This will give you an idea of what the arranger heard in his mind's eye when he was arranging this piano roll. Player pianos are great and can add so much pleasure to your life. They don't have to be perfect or in tune to be enjoyed. But there is more detail on the music roll than the player piano can express. You can imagine trying to play a vinyl LP on an old 78 RPM Victrola. The Victrola would not be able to deliver much detail. The harder you pump a player piano, the louder it gets. You can achieve a wide range of volume. The problem is, no matter what volume level the player produces, the notes that play at any time are all playing at the same level. So, for example, you are not able to make the melody, counter melody, or bass stand out with a higher volume level. Two controls, either levers or buttons, located in the front of the keys let you make one side of the piano softer than the other. As you can see, this is still limiting the musical expression. With each track playing a different instrument, it's easy to hear the detail the arranger put into the music. When the music gets compressed down to one layer of sound, the piano sound, and one level of volume, a lot of detail is hidden or lost. Player pianos can make really fine music, and they can be a lot of fun. This video is not about pointing out the shortcomings of player pianos, because they can be very expressive. It's about the complexity of the music found on the piano rolls. I use this half of my MIDI studio just like a player piano, and I really enjoy it. I'll be making a separate video showing all the details of this half of the MIDI studio in a future installment, but here's a quick rundown. These are foot pumps from an upright player piano that I've restored and modified. This is the valve side of the stack. This unit plays the 88 keys. The other side of this stack has 88 bellows or pneumatics. Above the screen is the spool box with a roll loaded up. The arrow is pointing to the electric motor. That's the roll drive. Behind the screen, extending to both sides, is a simulated piano action that I built. This replicates the mass and leverage needed to give 88 pneumatics the same response as with an acoustic piano action. This was needed to achieve a full range of volume. The circled area shows simulated piano keys. These provide leverage to achieve the same amount of throw to each of the 88 pneumatics. Above the keys are 88 steel rods. These give mass to the action, again, to achieve a full range of volume. Behind this enclosed area are two sets of 88 phototransistors and a circuit board. The circuit board processor translates the transistor signals to numbers for the velocity or volume. I'll be going into detail about this in the next video. This is a vacuum gauge. This indicates the level of volume or velocity as it relates to the vacuum level produced from the foot pumps. Just as player pianos have controls to make the two halves of the piano soft, I built this set of finger-operated pallet valves. These work on vacuum with valves and pneumatics just as the 88 key pneumatics operate. These pallets control a number of things. They control the mechanical soft bass and mechanical soft treble. The soft bass and soft treble limit the throw of the simulated piano action, but these are not as effective as the soft bass and soft treble in player pianos. Two pallets also operate these piano pedals. The sustain pedal on the right, as well as a soft pedal on the left. These work through the software. The soft can be set for any level of soft playing I choose. Pianoteq is the software I'm using to record the piano sound. And once again, I'm not sponsored. This is a freestanding window. You'll see shortly how I use Pianoteq with Reaper software. When I'm pumping, the pallet valves trigger the mechanical sustaining and soft pedals. The pedals also operate at the same time in Pianoteq. When the roll plays, the playing notes show up in red on the keyboard. The same notes show up as vertical lines here on this graph. This shows how loudly the notes are playing. Now I'll record a short section of a piano roll using Pianoteq. That's what the music sounds like when I'm using a microphone in front of my studio speakers. Pianos are very difficult to record. In this system, the piano roll is recorded with expression and various piano sounds digitally. Here's the same music as it's recorded through the Pianoteq software. So I've opened up Reaper again, and I'm ready to finish producing Over the Rainbow. The first thing I'm going to do is to remove all of the instrument sounds. By selecting the FX tab on this track, I can call up the window associated with the assignment of instruments. I'm going to record expression into the track labeled Single Note Melody using a piano sound from the Pianoteq library. I'm using the Pianoteq Studio Bundle. It comes with all of these choices for piano sounds, and each piano has a number of variations. After pumping through the roll a number of times on the freestanding version of Pianoteq sampling pianos, I've chosen the Kawaii for this project. It will bring out so much music from the arrangement. I've already set the velocity curve, the volume, and dynamics. Now I'm ready to record expression into the track. Right now, this track has the same volume or velocity for every note. I'm going to treat this track just like a recording studio would have done back in the 1960s and 70s. In a physical studio, each musician and singer had their instrument or vocal part laid down on a separate track. Then all the tracks were blended together and balanced to make the completed song. But now I'm not working with a paper roll. I can't record dynamics by playing a portion of the roll from the spool box. So how can I play one track of a MIDI file and record dynamics along with the piano sound I've chosen? On top of this unit, in the back of the spool box, is an interface I designed and built. I'll go into detail about this in the next video in this series. For now, here's a quick rundown. The interface has 88 electromagnets, one for each note. These are powered by a 12-volt DC power supply. The electromagnets were salvaged from a 100-year-old Moeller brand pipe organ. When a magnet is energized, it pulls up on the metal attached to a pallet valve. Each pallet opens up a port connected to one of the black rubber tubes shown here running to the right side of the photo. The pallet valves are pieces of wood attached on the left side with a hinge of thin leather. A piece of leather is also glued on the bottom of each pallet valve that seals the ports connected to the rubber tubes. Rubber tubes connect here to these white-colored T's. Reaper software sends MIDI signals to this circuit board. Each MIDI signal, 1 through 88, are sent to the corresponding magnets. When a paper roll is playing, a hole in the paper will uncover a hole in the brass tracker bar. This sends an air signal through one of the rubber tubes into the white-colored T down to the player stack, where the corresponding note on the player piano is triggered. When MIDI is played through the interface, each MIDI note is sent to the circuit board, which energizes a corresponding magnet. The magnet, in turn, lifts the pallet valve, sending the signal to a T and down to the player stack. By way of the interface, any MIDI signal or number of signals can activate notes on the player stack just as a roll can. I have a few things to do before recording. I'm covering the tracker holes so the interface can trigger the player notes instead of the roll. Back in Reaper, Pianoteq's Kawaii piano sound will be removed from track 4 because MIDI from track 4 will be sent to the circuit board for the interface, while the track itself remains silent. Pianoteq will be attached to track 5, where the piano sound will be heard as the MIDI is being recorded with expression. I've set the output of track 4 to the circuit board for the interface, and I've set track 5 to receive MIDI. You'll be able to see the MIDI notes as they're being recorded in real time here on track 5. I have track 5 set to record, and the master record for the program is also set. Now I only have to press this green arrow to record. While I'm recording, I'll be keeping close watch on this gauge. This measures the player note's vacuum level in inches of water. This is a range I'll be using, from 5 to 10 inches. That means the quietest notes will be played with as little power as it takes you to drink through a straw from the surface of water to your lips. That's all the power it takes you. But in order to provide enough air, the straw would have to be 1.5 inches in diameter when a lot of notes are playing. I'll flick this switch to turn on the DC power supply for the magnets. I'll hit the green button and start recording. Track 4, Blue, was the original track without expression. The notes have been recorded with expression on track 5, Red. Taking a close look at track 5 by opening the velocity window, it's clear the new track has been recorded with varying levels of volume. This line is a halfway mark for volume. This MIDI file was separated into tracks for high trills, single note melody, counter melody, main melody, accompaniment, and bass. These 6 tracks showing in red have all been individually pumped through to record velocity or volume. Each of these tracks has had Pianoteq assigned to the FX button. The original tracks without velocity have been muted. The number of tracks used to record each song will vary depending on the arrangement. This arrangement of Over the Rainbow is typical of most piano roll popular song arrangements. Producing music this way means that I've pumped through this song 10 or 15 times. But you won't see me pumping very often on the videos. Because a 3-minute song played at tempo 70, that's 7 feet of paper going by every minute, 210 feet of paper build up on the lower spool. The increased diameter pulls the paper over the tracker bar faster and faster as the roll plays. I use a metronome and set a tempo graph that follows a speed so the song follows a beat from beginning to end. And so I can only show short segments of my pumping because the video will end up going faster than the audio. The result of having recorded each track individually is that the notes that are playing at any one time are all playing at different volumes. To make each track sound differently from one another, I'll also change the piano's tone slightly for each track. Most software programs for piano sounds are recordings of real pianos. That's called sound sampling. Pianoteq models their piano sounds by programming sounds within the software to create virtual piano sounds. This gives the user the ability to shape the piano by choosing various characteristics. In the years I spent as a restorer, I spent many hours minimizing mechanical noise. These settings go to 0. The soft pedal level is set here. Reverb can place the virtual piano in a large setting with lots of reverb, or a small studio for a more intimate sound. Up to 8 microphones, each type being able to capture different qualities of sound, can be placed anywhere around the piano at any distance. Not only can the overall hammer hardness be changed, but hardness as it relates to volume level. The tone can be changed by giving the strings a more resonant sound and making them sing for a long duration. There are dozens of ways to alter the voice of the virtual piano I've chosen without changing its basic tone. Each of these 6 tracks have been recorded with expression. Each track has been assigned its individual Pianoteq kawai, and each kawai has its own unique settings. First, let's hear the MIDI file without expression. It does sound beautiful because I have Pianoteq producing a piano sound, but it's without expression or effects. We'll compare this with the completed song. So first, here's the MIDI without expression. I'll leave a link in the description for the full version of Over the Rainbow, and I'll also leave a link for the playlist piano rolls recorded with my new MIDI equipment. There'll also be links for 3 YouTubers who really enjoy their player pianos. I started this channel several years ago by posting MIDI files while I was selling my piano roll collection. I already have 700 videos posted of MIDI files you can explore. The first player piano I bought in 1973 came with the roll collection. Through the years, I've had more than 250,000 piano rolls go through my hands. I've been making MIDI files for 26 years. Piano roll music has been my passion for more than 50 years. I have so much music I want to share with you. I'm planning on new playlists for 60s and 70s music, syncopated 20s and 30s music, musicals, and of course ragtime, blues, and jazz. So please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to hear the latest. In the next installment about my MIDI studio, I'll show how I make MIDI files from piano rolls, and I'll show how I made the electromagnet interface. I'll top it off by having the most demanding roll I've ever owned put on a dramatic light show for you just for the fun of it. This won't be for a few months though, because I'm going to spend as much time as I can creating new music for the channel. If you'd like to help me make as many videos as I can with my new MIDI studio, you can click on the link in the description and buy me a cup of coffee. Please like this video and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for stopping by and enjoy the music.